Right?
JD,
No,
did you just give Joe and me an exclusive?
I think so.
Did you just
Holy
drop an
crap.
exclusive?
Oh yeah.
Oh man, like God, I
Dude.
feel super honored now.
Right? We're straight legit now. We got
Uh-huh.
exclusives.
Yeah, we have a scoop here. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Ultimate Effort Show with Alex.
And Joe.
Man, and we have a very special guest today. We have JD from Runehammer Games, also the brain power behind his own gaming company, Epic Sloth Games. So JD,
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Those who know.
yeah, and we're going to talk all about that. JD, we're so excited to have you here today.
Yes.
Super excited to be here.
Yeah, and I think just to touch on this real quick, I think you started at least with the Runehammer community maybe back in 2020 or so. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. More or less. I got started right before, right before 2020. It was like kind of the whole ICRPG scene, because I managed to have some in-person fun before
Okay.
the pandemic.
Gotcha.
So,
Cool.
Right.
Got it.
The before
So
time.
I was kind of just getting rolling, and then
Gotcha.
the pandemic pushed me more online to where I was a bit more active and such.
Got it.
That was, if I can interject here,
Yep.
that was where we had our epic confrontation. And now let me do the setup here, folks. So for the longest time in the Runehammer community, I was in as JD Sterling. That was my screen name. And then our man JD shows up here. And like the Highlander, there could be only one. So we had an epic roll-off. In my mind, it was like the dopest rock, paper, scissors you've ever seen. Like Quarter Cruise anime rock, paper, scissors.
There's volcanoes erupting in the background while simultaneously being a thunderstorm. It was pretty epic.
Exactly. So we had this epic, just a D20 roll-off on who got to keep the mantle of JD. And hey, I lost fair and square. He had an epic roll. I rolled really bad.
Well, and I think I was
am now Joe, and we got a JD, but still the Wonder Twin powers activate.
I think I was the catalyst behind that, because I'm like,
it's true.
So where I was going with this is like, I think we met in 2020.
There you go.
And then I was just like, hey, if you're going to be here, like, we can't have like two JDs floating around. It's way too confusing. And we're like, well, what do we do? And I'm like, roll for it.
Yep. That's how we do it out here.
Literally the most terrible way to greet anyone.
I don't know if you remember this detail from it, but I tried to concede, saying like, oh, I'm new here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Alex saw that as such a gracious gesture that I was bestowed the new mythical item of the Shield of Gray.
Correct.
And it was like, you gave me this item of like, you are now bestowed this thing. And I was like, I'll hold it with honor. And then I was actually in a campaign at that point and being run by Kane Driscoll of the Runehammer community. And my character was a shield based character. And so we were playing Relics of Odium, and that became my relic that I upgraded was the Shield of Gray. So the roll off made its way, filtered into now official game lore.
Oh, love it.
Epic. I love that even more.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So officially you are the keeper of the Shield of Gray. Like,
and I am officially Joe.
The
I
Shield.
love that title.
Yep. You are the JD. That is the Joe. But the power of the JD squared here today is just it's epic. So man, thanks so much for being here. We can't wait to talk all about you, Joe. Man, kick us off here.
Yeah, we have a tradition on Ultimate Effort Show. Some people may know what's coming. We've got to know the origin story. Every superhero's got an origin story. Every gamer's got an origin story. So what is yours? How did you get into gaming? Like where did it all begin for you?
So for me, I've always been a little bit of a nerd, and I've always kind of liked nerdy interests as young as I can remember. I remember my dream job when I was a kid. Like, I wanted to be a concept artist because those guys look like they had the coolest job.
Oh, nice.
And I want to, and essentially as a kid, what that translated to is like, I get to draw spaceships for a living. That's awesome. For our household as well, we really didn't have much magic in the household. That really wasn't like a theme my mom was comfortable with. And so sci-fi, good to go. You know, oh, they're mutants with powers. They got it. Okay, we're cool. So also my dad loves movies, and as soon as he had the reasonable excuse and like the release from my mom to like watch like sci-fi movies, that's what we were doing. So I was raised on sci-fi. When I was a kid, I had the action figures, and I've always had a bent towards solitary fun as well, where like I can sit in a room. So as a kid, I remember sitting in a room, having my action figures, and having them have these like epic fights and stuff, right? So I think RPGs began for me then, where I sat and I imagined these like super cool, like I always had the movie trailer, could never fill out a whole movie, but in my head I could come up with really cool movie trailers, you know?
That's awesome.
So that took me, that was just kind of, I enjoyed art. I did some photography. I did like yearbook in high school. So I kind of like always enjoyed more of the design aspects and stuff. And then in college, I got into designing my own little like board game. And so I called it a board game. What I know now looking back was it was a war game, because me and my brother tried to get into 40K when I was really young. And I really liked the hobby aspect of it, and I really liked the miniatures. But we didn't have enough money to actually like do 40K. And my brother is extremely competitive, and I hope he watches this, because I'm pretty sure he just made up all the rules that favor himself while we played. And so I remember just getting crushed all the time. And this is a thing that led into RPGs as well. I'm not a very competitive person, and I really favor narrative over like winning. Just in general, I tried playing basketball, I worked really hard at basketball and sat on the bench a lot. And so, I tried basketball, and part of it is just like, I look back and I'm like, man, you know, like good memories playing were always more important than like, I don't have the kind of personality just to crush people, you know, like I don't get a thrill out of that. So, so we did that. I collected little miniatures and stuff, had a ton of fun with that. My parents were gracious enough to spend way too much money on little tiny figurines for me to paint and collect. I had a whole shelf full. And then
I had almost all of the muscles. So the toys muscles, old people will probably remember those.
Yeah, so that's all good.
That's great.
So I started there, I played that. Had fun, and then I remember looking back at that time in college being like, I wanted it to be simple and not be so complex. And I didn't know about the indie gaming sphere. You know, I just it wasn't a part of anything that I was doing. So I decided to make my own. So I got little wooden blocks. I got icons from like gamingicons.net, you know, and like made little custom ones. I made little custom icons. I glued stickers on. So I had these wooden blocks with different kinds of units. There was like the tanky units and the fighting units. And, you know, what was really fun is I got to design this with my friends in college. We would play test it, and they could have input on like, what if the rules were like this? And I started seeing this spark of them being like, what about this? I can have input. It's not just like, oh, let's open the rule book and like, let's look at, okay, so no, you can't, you know, like I got this taste of like, no, let's design this together and it's for the point of having fun. And it was like, the whole thing was, it was like these mutated animals. And so it was like these like little like skirmish battles basically with these mutated animals and stuff. And then your main monster you could upgrade if you got kills. It would get little points, and it was like a skill tree that would build up. So there's all these little pieces of RPGs that like I had in the background.
Yeah, because like
I also played,
pulled in like the collaborative kind of elements.
Yep. So that's where it started clicking of like, oh, this is analog, and like I get to, you know, like collaborate with my friends. And it also like it scratched that itch of creating in a way that was super fun. And I played a ton of video games when I was younger. That was kind of a big nerd outlet for me. And then I just, at a certain point, I just said, no more video games. Like that was just that was a part of my growing up. It felt like to me at that point, and I don't have any judgment against video games, but I just went cold turkey. And then now I've been so out of it so long, I've tried to play some more, and I'm just like, I feel like an old man that doesn't, like, I'm a very young guy, and I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And still, I go back to a video game, and I want the story. I'm like, I just don't care about that. I can get the buttons in the right order fast enough.
Where did all these extra buttons come from?
Yeah, man. Yeah,
I tried playing like a roguelite and I just struggled, just like, I'm just dying all the time. What is the point of this game?
I reached a point.
I think that's the point of roguelites, is the dying all the time.
But I reached a point in my life where if I play a game now, I play them all on easy mode. Because I just want the exposition. I don't want all the frustration.
I don't want to stress on it, man. If I'm playing a game, like I'm the same way. I want to enjoy the game. So like I'll play on easy, and I'm not even ashamed of that.
There is this one time in college where this guy said he's going to run Dungeons and Dragons for everybody, and I went to a conservative Christian college, and so most of us had never played. And so when we were like, oh yeah, like let's do it, let's try it. And I don't know what he was actually like looking back. I don't know what he was actually doing, because he was doing some roles on his laptop, and he managed all of our characters for us, and he filled a dorm room with guys. I don't know how he did this, but like he ran this narrative where I would describe what I'm doing. He would say if it passed or failed, and he had something going on, but we didn't know the system. We didn't know anything. I got this taste of storytelling, and that moment burned into my mind of like, that was really cool. That's what this is about. Like, that's awesome. And it was like, I didn't build my character. I didn't do anything. I just kind of showed up and said stuff that my character did. And we had this really fun scenario of like these little, like imps that was just a flood of imps that were filling this attic of a house, and they started cascading down, and like, all of our characters were trying to like scramble and figure it out. And anyways, it was super fun. So that moment was there. And then I went overseas for a few years, and I was in the middle of nowhere in Africa, and that led to a real dry period of nerd culture because nobody there cared. And I had no outlet, and there was no, even getting internet and stuff was difficult. So it wasn't like streaming stuff or keeping up with things all the time. And that whole kind of side of me was just put on the shelf for a bit.
Wow.
And when I came back, I started just like getting back into general nerd culture. And then I had a friend at work that was into board games. And he was starting to get into like this new trend of, designer board games that are really good. And we started getting the games together. We started playing together at lunch when we worked together.
Oh, nice.
I started getting taste for board games. I was like, oh, I remember designing my own. I had a lot of fun with that. So I started designing my own board game again. And my whole board game idea was called Wizards and Warriors, but it was a whole thing I called Gambit. And I started getting, and it was like there was these power cards, and they would cast these spells, and then the wizard was the one you had to kill, but he was empowering the warrior that would like do the fighting, but the wizard was like doing these kind of kite moves and all this. And I loved like the first 50% of it, and then I got into edge cases. I got into competitive play, and I started going, what is this? I don't like this. Like, I just want to have these cool moments where this wizards and warriors are fighting. So I'm right there in that moment of like, I look at people that are deep in the hobby of board game design and how they're doing prototypes and blind play testing. They're doing technical writing on their, and like, rock on. But I was like, man, no, like
I don't want to do that.
Like, I'm done. We're having cool stories. And I still at this point, I didn't even really know about RPGs. And that leads me to, I was listening to a podcast on board game design, and they had a special guest speaker named Hanker Inferno. And he was a guest speaker on the Board Game Design Lab and podcast. And he started sharing perspectives on what board games can learn from RPGs. And I don't need to go into every detail after that, but that was like, oh, I like what this guy is saying. I'm going to check out his stuff. And that was when he was doing a lot of kind of how-to videos on YouTube. Had a lot of room design stuff, and really the key for me was whenever I looked at Dungeons and Dragons proper, it was so intimidating to me. I looked at, I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know if I could convince any of my friends to do this. But ICRPG, it was like, nah, man, you can do it.
I can do this.
Yeah. And his tone and like his empowerment at that point, it was a really, really big part of what he was doing was like just do it. Roll some dice, have some fun. You're going to figure it out.
Right.
And I really needed that to get over the hump. So I got some friends together. I said, hey, I want to play this game, and we're going to do it. They've never played RPGs before. I've never played RPGs before. And I just started running a campaign, and we had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. And that's how I got started in RPGs. And it just scratches every itch for me. I get to draw, I get to design, I get to think up stuff, but I don't have to worry about these edge cases that are like, well, when card 34 interacts with card 18, then all of a sudden the game breaks. It's like, no, you move through that as a table, and it's not competitive. So all the story I was telling so far is just like all the marks of what is a good time to me. It's like, we're telling a good story, we're not getting lost in the weeds. And ICRPG was the perfect fit, because it's just like you get to build your own stuff with it. Even from the moment I first started playing, it was like, I'm just gonna make my own stuff. And
I could just make it.
Yeah. There's my story.
Man, that's so great. Story. That's so good.
Awesome.
Really good.
Man, that's an origin story that spanned the globe.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
Like, that's awesome.
It literally did. So was ICRPG then your first system your first RPG proper, other than that sort of D&D experience you had in college?
Yeah, you guys, prepared me to say, here's a few questions we're going to ask, and I looked through there, and I've probably answered several already in that little origin story, because
no worries.
The ICRPG is the first system I played, and pretty much the only. I dabbled in Viking Death Squad when it came out, but it's been ICRPG, and I'm relatively new to this. It's a little intimidating seeing some of the other guests that you've had on and the veteran experience and such. And you smirk at that, but I'm just I'm just the guy got into this a few years ago.
No, man, that's epic.
Dude, we're all nerds with basically the same origin story. Some of them just started sooner than others. And for anybody watching, like, there's no time limit on any of this, folks. Like,
exactly. Yeah, we're all hobbyists.
You get here when you get here. Yeah,
we're all hobbyists together, and your experience is just as valid as anyone else's. I mean, it's epic. How you came here, and I love the fact that one of your main systems has been Index Card RPG. I love it. I mean, it probably might be my forever system. Like at this stage in sort of my origin story and RPG journey, right?
Likewise, it's still my go-to, and I have my own game system out there in the world, and I'm still like, I kind of want to play ICRPG instead. So I mean, there's that.
Exactly.
That's my go-to.
So, so I am curious though, JD. Like, have there been other systems? Like, have you dabbled in like Mothership and like Dungeon World and in any like have you played any additional systems?
I look at every few months. I look at Mothership and I go, man, that's so cool. I love the horror vibes that it offers. The tweaks to ICRPG I ended up making in what I've made are directly inspired back to Mothership's Panic system.
Gotcha.
And I always want to be super upfront about that. It's very, very connected. It's just a little tweak on it. I think it's really cool. And then every time I get really into their stuff, there's a line that's crossed that I just can't, like, it just becomes not fun, because it just gets a little gross for me. And the intensity, it is ratcheted up to this point where I'm like, I want like a touch of the horrific, and I love monster movies. I don't love horror movies. I don't know if that makes sense. So I like where it touches in the monster, aliens kind of vibe, where it gets into like the creep factor and the heavy gore. I just get a little bit lost. So I've really taken a lot of inspiration from Mothership, and I think they're doing something really, really cool. And I tried running one session of it, and it's also a really different style of play. And part of the journey I've been on so far is I'm used to ICRPG. I rely on the dice a lot. And Mothership is like, if you rely on the dice too much, it's really punishing the players, because you're supposed to be clever where you don't have to roll. Right. And so it's a different style. And so that's been tough for me to like switch my brain over to like so lots of inspiration from Mothership. I think it's super cool. It would be one of those I would love for someone to run for me so I could learn and like run one of their more like monster heavy settings.
Right.
I think that would
Low
be
or no gore.
Yeah. And I don't mind violence. I don't mind some gore. It's just like I tried to use. I was running a game actually, in ICRPG, and I used their nightmare table, and I didn't really read beforehand, and I started reading off some of those nightmares, and I was like, "Whoa, sorry guys, like." These are a little intense. I couldn't get through them with like, keeping like a straight face. I was like, okay, all right, sorry guys. I didn't quite realize what I was getting into here. So,
Right.
so it's just the level of intensity. But if someone ran that, we're on the same page, which is a huge thing for me. It's just like, I just want to be on the same page with the table. And if everybody was kind of like, yeah, we're not going to take it up to 10, we'll keep it capped at like a 7, I would have so much fun in Mothership. I think it's really cool. So Mothership is awesome. And as far as other systems go, I've wanted to also get into Viking Death Squad and play. I played a few sessions of it. I think it's really cool. I love the aesthetics, and it's skipping ahead to later, but the book is like just such a pinnacle for me of design and aesthetic, and just I love it so much.
Interesting.
So
awesome. That's awesome.
The book is a hell of an artifact.
Yeah, it's super cool.
I got my copy back here, and
yeah. But besides that, it's been ICRPG, and it's been a huge reason for that is I haven't been in the hobby a super long time. And before too long, I started getting hooked into the setting that I was making. And I've just been soaking in that for like 2 years now, where it's just, this is what I think about. It's what I create. It's the games I run, because I really like it.
Oh, that's that's perfect. Yeah. Well, I want to leave that as a teaser, because we are going to get there. But of course you would do that. And I think, in terms of like, creating and enjoying the hobby and doing those things, like if it's something that you're super passionate about, like that's perfect. Like keep stoking those fires, man. I can't wait to see where all that goes. But I am curious on this topic of systems. Like, have you played traditional, like, right now, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons? Like,
Nope. Never. I've never touched 5e.
I love it.
People talk about 5e, and I'm like,
yeah. Hey,
I don't know.
You're not missing anything.
I have played it. I'm the same way. I'm like,
actually, it honestly, as a system, it isn't bad. You could pick it up super easy because of your familiarity with ICRPG. It's just, ICRPG just kind of boils down all the main components of it.
I've been far enough away where all I really hear are people kind of venting about it, and so then I'm like, well, then I just won't play it.
Look, like, I've been in the hobby a long time, and when I first got the player's guide, like I had to go check out a YouTube video to make a character. Like that's bad sign. That's a bad sign about your game design. I'm just saying.
No offense to 5th edition or anything, but like it kind of feels like those bake-off moments where Paul just comes up, looks at it, all style, no substance.
I think honestly, this probably hits on a point of style as a GM, and also maybe something I would want to voice to like other GMs that aren't like, that haven't been doing this for 40 years. I just want to validate as a perspective. When I looked over at 5e, it has so much knowledge and expectation and lore. So even if it wasn't mechanics or creating a character, that plays into it, because there's a lot as a GM you're expected to know. You're always supposed to help players when they get stuck. And when I started playing with my ICRPG group and like I didn't know anything, I still was the expert on the game. I had to be able to clarify and adjudicate. And when you look at adjudicating like 400 pages of additional rules, that's its own quagmire.
Exactly.
But backing up from that, just the lore and how I think at the point where I've kind of gotten into the hobby was where Critical Role was blowing up. There was a lot more where D&D was shifting to that lifestyle hobby of like you can know a lot about it and not play it as much, and still you're kind of in it. And with that being the case, I've always been really intimidated by a lot of lore. I find it like a really heavy lift. Some people find it helpful because it fills in the gaps for them. But for me, I'm like, if someone asks a question and I can't accurately reproduce the answer about this is what this region is like, this is what the monster is like. And from, what I hear, which is, you know, it's a generality. But from what I hear, there's a lot of people are reading the same books you're reading. A lot of people are having expectations of like, this is what the monster does. This is what Strahd is like. This is what the Sword Coast is like.
Right.
And,
I have no idea which direction the Keystone and Mithranor faces. Why does that matter?
Yeah, and people are like, some folks are fanatical about it too. About those details.
It's a fun for them. Like they get to. It's like, I know this. If you're really into a book series, I know this world. I know the characters, and then you get to be in the book series, and you're like, oh, I can go look at the tower that they wrote about. I get that that's really, really fun, but as a game master starting out, I was like, man, I'm so scared by that. And so that was a big thing for me, where even when I started ICRPG, I didn't even use Alfheim because I was intimidated by trying to absorb it. I just made my own little region. We started in one spot and just started filling it out where it was just its own thing. But for that very reason. Perfect. So, there's so much out there, so much information. There's so many cool books. It's insane. And I just want to say, from the perspective of like, if you're out there and you feel that way, like, just start small.
Come play.
Don't have to memorize the whole book.
Come play ICRPG.
Yep. Come on over.
Shameless plug. Well,
yep.
So when did you, JD? When did you make the transition to DM? Like, we've talked a little bit about it, about being a DM and running games. When did that officially occur for you? And what was that experience like?
First session ever in RPGs, because I actually didn't play. Wasn't a player until a year and a half in. I'd been running like dozens of sessions before I even knew what it was like to be a player. And King Driscoll was the kind soul that invited me into a run online where I got to be a player, and it was super fun. But
that's awesome.
So for me, I've been the forever GM for sure, and I don't really mind that either. I like it. It helps me go for the kind of fun that I want to have, and so that's fine with me. And when I get chances to play, I think that would be great. I am selective in being a player because I'm going after something really particular, and I'm kind of in that phase of like, I want to go after this certain thing, and so I'm kind of searching for that, looking for it, and but so far it's being a GM.
Hey, well, now I feel terrible. Like the few times I've invited you to games and I've dropped you into my insanity and been like, "Buckle up, because off we go."
No, I have a great time. I got the pleasure of playing in that GI Joe game with you guys, and that was so fun. That's a great memory I hold to this day. Oh, super fun.
That game was super fun, but you guys made it so great. Oh, it was so good. All right. So I think we've talked all around sort of gaming and your origin story. We talked a little bit about how you found Runehammer. Just to sort of put the exclamation point onto this piece of all the Runehammer products, and of course that now includes Easy D6 by DM Scotty. Some of these other things. What would be your favorite Runehammer product?
Yeah. Well, there's kind of multiple angles on that. So the gut check is Viking Death Squad as a product. If we're going purely as a product and not the impact it's had in my gaming life, but as a product, Viking Death Squad's so cool. It's awesome. I think it's sitting right over there. So
I love it.
It's so cool. There's multiple reasons why this is my favorite. One is that it's small, and as I mentioned, I have a difficulty absorbing this huge tome, and I want enough to get me rolling. And that was a pretty good pun.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, and there's a lot of truth in that statement. A lot of truth in it.
And also, like I mentioned, when I was a kid, I would draw, and I tend to be a bit of a perfectionist. I think it's probably common among GMs out there that you kind of overthink things. And
I think that's common among human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. So I really wanted to draw more, but I always got really intimidated, and I would start drawing and I'd feel like not great about what I was doing. I just couldn't get traction. So then Hank was doing Viking Death Squad, and he was doing all of his art on a Remarkable tablet. and I saw what that thing was capable of. And I was telling my wife, I was like, this thing is so cool. It's awesome. Like I'd love to have it. And she surprised me with one.
Oh,
and it
man.
was
Yeah,
that was a
like,
big,
they're like,
that was a big spin.
Yeah, they're not cheap. Yeah.
They are not. And so I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And I started drawing on there, and the first attempts, but for the point being, it gave me traction on drawing for the first time in my life, because
Wow.
it removed this, like, if I make a mistake, I can get rid of it quickly, but I'm not like on a screen all day. And that forgiveness and flex in a Remarkable was enough to get me over this kind of anxious hump to start drawing again. And I owe that traction and drawing to the work that Hank did in Viking Death Squad, because I saw the art. I thought it was so cool. I love black and white so much. I love it. And I love the style in there. And so Viking Death Squad is just so cool. I love the poison forest and the insectoid enemies, and that shows up later in my stuff I've been working on. And I just think it's fantastic. The ICRPG Master Edition, I spent more money on getting the Viking Death Squad and Collector's Edition. I spent more money on those books than maybe I've spent on any hobby thing in my entire life.
Wow.
Getting that, when I ordered that from the pre-order from Odysseus, like it was like an event on the Discord where everybody's like, it's live, and I like went on there to get it really quick.
Grabbed mine.
Yep. Now I get to wait months.
Yep. Oh yeah,
So,
I jumped quick. The collectors are sitting back here too.
But
so those two books have been so pivotal and are the pinnacle for me. They're amazing.
hey, not to cut you off, but I cannot tell you how cool it was to travel all the way to Calgary, Canada, to visit my buddy Dennis. We walk into, like, I mean, literally the biggest RPG store I've ever been in my life, the Century Box there. Like, if you ever get a chance to go there. It's so cool. Like just about any RPG and hobby item you could ever imagine is in this place. And to walk in and see Viking Death Squad on the shelf. Like, I walk in, like, there's Viking Death Squad on the shelf. And it's just oh, it was so cool. It was so dope. Cool. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack us.
Yeah, I think that's my answer. Viking Death Squad, and I've been, I haven't played a ton in Viking Death Squad, but the conciseness of it, the size, it's a bit of what I would like to shoot for in the future of having something out there, because it felt more attainable than Collector's Edition that just, I mean, it's like there's enough information in there to play for decades. And you could play decades of Viking Death Squad too, but it's just it's so hefty. Like, Collector's is so hefty, and Viking Death Squad felt like, wow, like this is something I could strive for. I just thought it was really really cool.
Yeah,
so,
it's super cool. Like it's super cool. And and I would say it's awesome to hear your perspective, because I don't know that Viking Death Squad gets as much love as it deserves.
Yeah,
like
it deserves a lot.
I don't hear a ton of people talking about it, and the truth is, it really is one of Hank's better creations, for sure.
Like goats. If there were goats, more people would show up. If there were goats.
What?
Joe, that's an insider joke. So here we are. We're like, come with us for a minute, JD. Come with us. So
I'm here.
So we're with Hank. We're doing a design session on Viking Death Squad. We're talking about different stuff that could be in the world, and we're talking like what about like plants that like kind of burrow into your skin, and like, oh, that's great. Like, we're talking about all this crazy stuff. And Joe goes, guys, I've got it. Hear me out. What about goats? We're like, goats. What?
I'm telling you, like, no, see, like, because in my head, goats
I'm not writing
now.
that down over here to like supercharge my own projects.
Dude, goats right now,
thought of this.
Like, they eat so much, they climb ridiculous things that they should not be able to climb because of the way their hooves are already made. Like today, everybody's seen the pictures of them up the walls. You've seen them up in trees. The amount of stuff they can eat and digest and have no problems with. I was like, what if they were mutated? And in this future, this 10,000 year Earth, all the things they could eat, they're chewing metal, they're eating through Borgs, they're eating through characters, they're eating through your homes. and climbing on everything. Like you cannot stop them. No wall. That's where I was at. Everybody's like, goats, Joe? I was like, goats.
Apocalyptic.
I'm sorry, I had to throw that out. Like the goats.
It honestly, it's actually a really cool idea that, you know, like sort of like we all talk about, like in the apocalypse, right? Roaches would survive. There's a little teaser for later. That roaches would survive, you know. But Joe's premise was that, you know, goats would also be a survival animal in the apocalypse for these reasons, and it's a good idea. But the way he delivered it, man, like,
it was not good.
It's goats. And
Hear me out.
Like, what?
Goats. Goats were the second.
Did the goats make it into mutation, like herds of these giant goats?
No. They didn't. No, because you just
Not
need to
in
look
Viking Death Squad,
on
not
Hank's
in
face,
mutation. I didn't even use goats.
It's like, okay, guys, like, let's focus in a little bit more.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks for letting us hijack your interview,
Yeah, sorry about
JD, for that story. That's a good memory. I will say also, you're talking about the poison forest.
Yes,
We had an epic encounter there in one of our early play tests with Hanker, and I think we faced the big dragon there.
and we hid from it.
And and our strategy was just to hide.
Yeah,
That's a good call. That's nasty.
My character Lorcus, I had the my character
Yep.
Lorcus, I had the what the heck is that, like the gulling shell, or I don't remember exactly what it's called, but you can disguise as a beetle. So like I opened the big hard shell of this armor and covered both of them, and I was like, we're just gonna hide and let that dragonfly keep going because we don't want to fight it.
Oh, the art
And
on
the gambit worked.
that thing.
The gambit worked.
All right.
Yeah.
Ooh,
It was scary and cool.
So I think you
Sorry.
can tell we're fans of Viking Death Squad. Also, we love it. Man, it's super awesome that that's your favorite product. I hope that ICRPG is your second favorite.
Man,
I want to say this is probably worth mentioning at this point because it betrays another style thing for me. I enjoy fantasy. I'll get into it. If somebody's into it, I'll get into it. It's not my go-to, and part of that was when I was growing up. It wasn't part of like the nerd language that I was speaking. It was always science fiction, and so like sci-fi is so much easier for me to access. It's so much easier for me to like enjoy, and also I think like it betrays a little bit of this like I kind of want to not be where the crowd is at, and so with like there's such a flood of fantasy stuff. And I think that Viking Death Squad for me was kind of like one of the reasons I really like it is because it does stand on its own, and you know it doesn't get as much attention because it's not in that mainstream, but it's so cool, and I just love that it did its own thing, and that's probably a big reason why I like it too.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I will say very similar to you, even though I had no restrictions in terms of content that I could consume as a youth. My primary fiction was I read science fiction. Like almost primarily as a kid, and I had those buddies who were just like, man, you got to read The Hobbit, you got to read Lord of the Rings. Like I didn't check those books out until like I was like an adult.
Right? So, The Hobbit. What are you talking? Have you read Integral Trees? Did you read Smoke Ring? Have you checked out The Man Zin Wars?
Right. I had
Foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so I always joke that my childhood was all about lasers and rivets. Like that was sort of where I was, right? And you see it a little bit in terms of the games that I run. Like I think Joe would say I run a pretty decent fantasy game, but when I run science fiction, like it's like some of it's just like really awesome. I think. I mean, it's
think
clear.
So too.
I like sci-fi. But so I get it. All right, so I want to transition here now, and I want to talk a little bit about UJD as game designer.
Yes.
Sure. And I want to talk about your premier product here, The Waste is Not Kind.
Wink, wink.
Yeah. And for folks who don't know, The Waste is Not Kind is a post-apocalyptic sort of complete adventure toolkit, like an add-on for ICRPG. Currently available, by the way, on DriveThruRPG. We'll put the link in the description.
It's a fantastic product.
It's super awesome. So it takes you all the way through new mechanics, sort of these add-ons, which we'll talk about, different classes for this post-apocalyptic environment. I think there are 1, 2, 4, it's like 7.
Right.
from Duster to Maniac. There are cool loot tables. There are all kinds of locations. There are factions. There are monsters. There's car combat rules and guidance, GM guidance.
Mm-hmm.
I have a burning question though, JD. Why post-apocalypse? And I
Sure.
say that because you know, in terms of like kind of like we were talking about, I think in terms of traditional RPGs, fantasy is probably the king, followed closely by sci-fi. And then everything else starts to become kind of like a niche. So even like
down here,
even cyberpunk, you know, like feudal Japan type stuff, you know, mecha, like all those like mechs, all those sort of things like become a bit more fringe. And I think post-apocalyptic is sort of in that more niche kind of hobby area. So how and why did you end up with post-apocalypse?
So there's a few steps along this journey.
Awesome.
One is that I love Mad Max Fury Road. I think it is one of the coolest action movies ever. It's amazing. And just as a work of art, as a movie, it's amazing. As the way it makes you feel. Yeah. And admittedly, the whole series is cool, but Fury Road for me is like the touchstone. It's a touchstone for The Waste Is Not Kind, by the way, of like that. If you want to know what the world's like, it's essentially Mad Max Fury Road with some extra stuff, because there's not quite Fury Road's world. It needs a little bit more wonder, and I acknowledge that. So I've tried to spice it up a little bit. All right. But all I say, I love that movie. That was a big part of it. A big thing in a lot of post-apocalyptic fiction, it's very dark. Nobody's good. And that doesn't work for me. I don't care for that tone. I really like heroics. Yes. And Mad Max Fury Road is it's heroic fantasy. I mean, it's the knight, you know, who's like flawed, but then he steps up and then he's just a shining star, right? And he has redemption, and the story's about redemption, which I love. It's and it's colorful, which is, you know, I love black and white art, but the movie has color. There's hope. There's humor, and there's a lot of post-apocalyptic where it's just like the sky is gray, everybody has a raggedy beard, you know. And there's something about that tone that I really liked. That wasn't like The Road. Like, good grief, that movie is. Whoa, it's heavy. You know,
it kind of just down the whole time and not so enjoyable.
It's making a point, but I don't want to play in that world. You know, like that's not fun for me. I don't want to get into the icky themes that post-apocalyptic often carries. And so I saw that there was a chance that post-apocalyptic it could have rays of light. It could have redemption. It could have heroics. So that was a big part. The other part is growing up in a military family, being American, and watching action movies. I think that, you know, gun fiction is pretty darn cool. When it's in the Matrix and they've got twin Uzis and the whole lobby is exploding, I'm here for it. That's a good time. And so I like the whole kind of like you get to play with kind of the machine gun kind of gritty, you know, mechanics and stuff. Which awesome. So that's cool. The other thing is that Hank has expressed that he will never touch post-apocalyptic. And he said it's nihilistic. I don't like it. I like fantasy. And he said that in a stream. And I was already kind of concocting some of this. And I said, I'm more sold because I can find space to occupy that I know I'm not going to overlap with him. And that is going to be its own thing. It can stay on its own. And I'm not going to like take attention away from where it deserves to be for Runehammer. And we can all kind of play along, right? And so that was it. And also, when I was forming a table group, I had pitched this kind of Mad Max style setting, and they're like, "Oh yeah, like counting bullets and survival, and you know, car combat stuff." I'm like, yeah, let's do it. That sounds really cool. So it was born in the context of like this table group that I had, and that was kind of the last campaign we were able to have before life kind of took us in different directions. But we ran. But the first origin of this world was starting out with the first thing. I had some really, really basic character types and stuff like that. And we just started building out the world from there with these kind of like step by step, and all the detail that you're seeing in The Waste is Not Kind. I would say 80% of it was, played. And then like 20% was a riff on like, that makes sense from what we played. Maybe 80% is a bit generous because we didn't get to all the different areas, but it was all the details and once we finished that campaign, I could sit down. I had a lot to work with to be able to create it. So it was played out as well. So on that note as well, to my surprise, I've been sitting here and pondering what's the future of The Waste for the past few weeks. I've taken a break and kind of looked at it, and I was like, if anything, I'll get some feedback. I'm going to email Hank and ask what it would take for The Waste Not Kind to like be a Runehammer thing. What it would take, and he responded pretty quickly and said, "Yeah, let's do it." So
that's big.
So
epic.
All that to say, I was like, whoa, like, thank you, and so we started talking on Discord. We're getting something together. He's like, well, how about mid-September? Because I had this laundry list of things to fix. I was like, oh man, that's really fast, but like, okay, let's do it. Roll up the sleeves and get to it. And then yesterday he sent me a message. He's like, well, how do you feel about getting it done by next week?
Yeah. Well, if you've never worked with him before, let me just say, buckle up and hold on tight, because the man works at a frenetic pace.
Yes. And so I was able to respond and be like, I'm sorry, I can't do next week, but I will work on it as fast as I can. And we're working on details to hash that out. And
that's so awesome.
He's given me permission to be able to announce it and such. And I don't know at what point it's going to be in the process by the time that this is, out to the masses or whatever. But we're working on it, which is super cool. And even if it gets pushed back, it'll continue to get worked on. And no matter what happens, if it's a good fit or bad fit, I expect it all to go through. But the point of the matter is, I really like this thing. I'm excited to see it out there, whether that's under the Runehammer banner or not. He said he's in. I'm just trying to give the grace of like, it's years later.
JD, did you just give Joe and me an exclusive?
I think so.
Did you just drop an exclusive?
Oh yeah.
Oh man, like God, dude. I feel super honored now.
We're straight legit now. We got exclusives.
Yeah, we have a scoop here. Like,
scoop.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Where's my press hat?
I think you just completely wrecked my editing schedule as far as like videos, because I think this video has to come out sooner rather than later now.
Yeah, all to say, it has been really great to see the validation of people saying they like it. To have Hank himself, who with the story I've shared so far, he's been such a role model to me, and I haven't had a ton of other role models in the hobby of like, I'm not just going to all the different systems, all different designers. Like this guy's been my North Star when it comes to game design and attitude, and how generous he is with his patrons and his products. And he's just like, you're here, just take the thing, And so I'm really excited to work with him, really excited to make this thing. And I am going to be furiously working away in the next few weeks to like upgrade what's already there. So, so there you go. So that's the announcement. And part of that is, as I've expressed before, I kind of like having my own little corner, and I know that it won't get as much traction as if Hank himself released a new fantasy thing, but I'm okay with that. I like it, and it's fun.
Well, you got my traction because, like you, I'm a huge fan. The post-apocalypse. I mean, I grew up a few movies earlier. Mad Max was already out. Road Warrior came out. That was my Fury Road. I got Road Warrior when I was young. It was brand new. I was like, oh, and then I had to go back and watch Mad Max. And then we got Thunderdome, and I was like, it's Tina Turner. Oh my God. And I was having a great time. And then Fury Road. So I've been in it, plus, things like Thundar the Barbarian, like that was full on apocalypse. He-Man was full on post-apocalypse. Like these things all this media I was ingesting when I was young were like the big things for me. So I'm right there with you on that. And you got my traction, folks. I have played the game with the man himself. It is excellent. That whole run jumping between cars was epic. The roaches are goddamn terrifying. I love your roaches. They are beautiful. They're bold. They will rip your face off. The waste may not be kind, but you totally are, sir. And I'm stoked, dude. Like, this is awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I can't wait to get my copy.
Yeah, and that's something I'm really excited about is, Viking Death Squad's been like a pinnacle for me. And I also wanted to say, like, Altered State and the work that you've done on that is like Altered State and Viking Death Squad and Mothership. Like, all of those are like really big streams that are flowing into The Waste is Not Kind, because we share a similar style from Altered State of like, I like the cinematic action. I like being able to do cool stuff. And so there's a lot of similarities between the character types and all that.
Oh, that's awesome.
So my pitch for The Waste is Not Kind, for those that are not familiar, is that it is heroic fantasy in a post-apocalyptic setting. It's two generations removed from the fall of the world, so you're not dealing with the chaos as much as it is a bit more of a Wild West, New Frontier kind of setting, where now it's kind of tribal. There's factions. There's a lot of different factions that are all vying for different things. So you get to have lots of fun with humans trying to get things from other humans, and that leads to lots of intrigue. And the world is very human focused. It's the enemies are mostly human. The factions are human. And really, the only monstrous hint that's given are the roaches. And this is where Mothership and aliens and all that flows in. Whereas, like, I don't want exactly zombies. I don't want exactly xenomorphs. And I want something that could be kind of touching those themes without it being the same. Yeah. And so the roaches are these insectoid monsters. Yeah. And they have these, they're kind of larvae, are called crawlers, and they can get on your spine, hook into your spine, hook into your brain, and control you, and you become a slave of the roach hive. And then you mutate into living weapons, which is all that you can. It can be a wellspring of these different mutant types. And the whole idea of the setting is that it's meant to be gritty but heroic. And so one player that's been super stalwart, which is Tornado Fire on Discord, he gifted me the term Noble Dark. And so the setting is meant to be serious in terms of, it's bad things are happening, the world's broken, the weather's terrible, like you're in survival mode. But it's meant to be noble in terms of these characters that you have are trying to make the world a better place, and they're not going to look the other way when bad things are happening. So that's the idea. And then it's beyond that, it's the Mad Max flavor of machine guns, and you get to push your character to the limit, but there's not superpowers, there's not huge changes to reality. It's all about like humans being as awesome as they can be and also facing like incredible odds. So that's my pitch.
Well, no, that's fantastic. And kind of touching back to what you said about Hank kind of shying away from this sort of nihilistic theme that you find in a lot of post-apocalyptic games. When we were first having talks about Altered State, and I was and he was talking about partnering with me on that. We had a very serious conversation about that. He's like, man, I hate this nihilism in Cyberpunk that you're just mercenaries doing jobs and you're just gunning down innocents and there are no rules. And I'm like, but that's not the fiction that I want to write. Like, I want to make a game about heroes, and yes, you've got dystopia, but let's talk about like what the good guys are doing to like to, as like resistance, or to try to make things better in the world. And that's where I want these characters to like kind of hit the ground. And that was sort of the moment for him where he was like, oh, I'm in. Like if that's what it's about, then I'm in. And that's definitely for me, like I think like you, so awesome when you have heroes who are and Joe. When you have heroes who are trying to step up and do the right thing, so
hey, like Bowie said, we could be heroes. That's it.
Well, I gotta say, JD, I love it.
Oh yeah,
and I love that you were hooked. That you're hooked on post-apocalypse. I think it's so cool. A little bit different than you guys. I got started with Damnation Alley, the movie with George Papard back in the day. That kind of dates me. And then I played the old Commodore 64 game Wasteland, which if you can ever check it out is so good. It was a little bit of the precursor to all the Fallout games that have like come in the modern era. But Wasteland was a sort of a turn-based RPG back on the Commodore 64, and it was so good. And it actually kind of like Borderlands has a little bit of like zaniness to it too. Like I kind of like my post-apocalypse to have a little bit of zaniness because I feel like you need that lighthearted a little bit, you know, in terms of the world, but really awesome. We have touched on this. We know the waste is not kind. You can get it from DriveThruRPG right now for literally, folks, like a bargain basement price. Like in terms of what you're getting. This supplement for ICRPG is priced so affordably and so reasonably. I highly encourage you to go and get it right now. If you had
booklet.
Nice.
So prints out to a nice little booklet.
It's so great.
Style.
Oh, and I think I need to touch on this too, real quick. I was heading somewhere, but JD, you did all the art for the waste is not kind. Also,
that's right.
And so the art style is super cool.
Very thematic with the tone of the game.
Yeah, it's like your art style is super fun. Like it's super good. The book layout and just sort of the way you package everything is so good. Excuse me. In addition to the waste is not kind, you can also get the Roach Zine, which is a supplement to the waste is not kind that includes 9 very specific roach monsters, and then in particular all these mutations that you were talking about. So there are tables of mutations that if your character is, I guess, roach infected.
Yeah. So let me touch on that real quick.
Yeah, please.
Where, you know, I tried to keep the zaniness down in the core of what this is. So
Gotcha.
there's not a lot of zaniness that's there. There's high technology that's really rare. It's basically like you find a golden nugget that also maybe could zap a car into oblivion. Like it's that kind of thing where it paints a target on your back, and that's going to be really important for GMs if there's a steel net, which is these old abandoned, like, you know, when the world broke, this organization called SteelNet said, we're going to fix the world. So they go into all their bunkers, they work on prototypes, but of course nothing actually fixes what was broken. But all these bunkers then create these dungeon opportunities where if you discover one, there's going to be prototypes inside and loot. And so that's part of what I'm upgrading with the new version is going to be more of these items. But that's as zany as it gets, is like these kind of one-off powerful things that all of a sudden, if you have it and other people know you have it, it's like everybody's going to try to come get it.
Gotcha.
The Roach Zine was, I further developed those monsters that show up at the end of what's available right now. And I wanted, the challenge for myself was I want to design a group of monsters that each one is like a cog in they're kind of all one big monster. So you don't have to worry about, you don't have to worry about running one of them with like 7 different abilities, but like this guy does this thing and this one does this thing, and they function off each other. So you can kind of like build your encounter on, like, I want just glass cannon. I want to throw living arrows at at the party. Then you would pick the Reapers and you would pick the Spikes, and you just throw those at them and be like, good luck. If you want to pick, like, I'm creeping through a hive and all of a sudden I come into a room and there's like 24 of these creatures that can take me over, and they have these big brooding creatures that like are shepherds and like take care of them, then you're going to do the crawlers and you're going to do the hunchbacks. And so you can mix and match how those feel. And the idea is that each one is so simple. Like the stat blocks are like just stupid simple for those, because you should have like 3 or 4 in every encounter. So you don't have, as a GM, you don't have to be like, oh, okay, this guy does this, this, and this, this, and this. Yep. And then the mutations are, if you want more zany, here you go. Here's mutations. Just plug it in, because it is a toolkit, and it's like you can opt out and not add mutation, because I played a few games of those mutations and they get wild.
Yeah, exactly.
But if that's what you're into, they're there for you. So that's the right thing.
That's so good. So good. And then you have 2 other products, which you have some VTT tokens set up in the same world. Mecha Orcs, which are super fun, like these sort of like robotic / like mechanized orc guys. And then you have sci-fi rat men that I think, like, those really kind of like scratch an itch for me. Like, they're super cool.
So those are just I was getting started in art, making stuff. That was from some of the first campaigns that I did. And the mecha orc was one of my favorite characters I've ever played. I did my own art for my character, and then I kind of built a few other guys off of him. And so those are just they're there. Those are free. Just pick those up if you like the style. Have fun with them.
All right. Here's some tokens.
Love it.
Yeah,
I love
epic.
I love it. Well, what other? We've talked about your exclusive announcement, like the partnering with Runehammer, which I think is fantastic. Right? So good.
Hell of a new project, so to speak, or new product, at least.
What other potential products are out there, or maybe are on the horizon for EPIC Sloth Games?
Yeah, for me, this is absorbing all my attention to kind of just this new partnership and development, and I want this thing to be as cool as it can be in the time that I have to do it. And all that to say, I don't really have plans for much else. If I get to keep making cool stuff for The Waste Is Not Kind, that's great. If I take a break and just play games, that's great. But I'm really excited about the potential just to keep making stuff and having it out there is a lot of fun. And really, at the end of the day, these RPGs came along. I mean, everybody had a really hard time in the pandemic, but they came along RPGs came along in a pretty hard season of life. They've been a really big, just way to cope, a way to connect with people, a way to have fun, tell stories, always have something in my brain where I can kind of de-stress. And so that's going to be the plan moving forward is I want to keep making stuff, and I want this to be something that continues to be fun. And I want to put out there that the mark of success for me will be when I get to hear about people that aren't directly connected to me. So I've had a few people that have been players in my game that have run games in the Waste. And I'm curious to see, I really want to hear if anyone's out there and your group loves this thing and you're playing, please tell me. It would be the most encouraging thing ever, because I really want to see a GM picks this up. It does the heavy lifting for them. They're able to use it. Their group is loving it. That's going to be the mark of success, when it's people that aren't directly tied to me introducing them, to me talking it up, to me holding their hand to this is what the world's like. But this thing itself can land. They can pick it up and be like, oh, this world's cool. I'm going to sacrifice my group's time and energy and attention to invest in this thing. That's going to be the biggest mark of success. And so for me, where I can have that in the future, that's what I'm striving for. I want it to be at that level where, somebody new shows up on the Discord and they're like, my group's been playing The Waste Is Not Kind for 6 months and loving it. And I'm just going to be like, oh, that's going to be a day to celebrate.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Right?
That's so good.
That is excellent. Hell yeah. That would be a great moment. And speaking of great moments, if I can do a quick transition.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite gaming moments, either as a player or a GM?
Yeah, well, and let me bolt onto that too. JD, were you a member of the Brunch Bunch?
Yeah. That was me.
Okay.
Awesome. That group was super fun. That was where I was able to be a player. It was super fun. We had a stretch where it was me, Kane, Skippy, and David, who is not common on the Discord, but we had a group going on Saturday mornings where we'd get up early, and sometimes really early. And part of that was David lived in Ireland, so catching his schedule was to meet that. And we would take turns and run 4 sessions at a time and just have an arc, and then we'd switch to a new setting, a new GM. And it was a blast. So that was the Brunch Bunch.
I thought
Bean and I reminisce often.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that group, kind of disbanded a little bit or is no longer playing together, because I love the idea, because Joe and I are part of the Moldy crew. It's been a very long-standing Runehammer sort of gaming group. I would love to know what other sort of long-standing gaming groups are out there, but I loved the Brunch Bunch. First of all, I loved all you guys. I didn't know David, but I loved all you guys who were in that group.
It was Rogue Zian, right?
Nope.
Was that?
Nope, it was.
David? I don't remember what his screen name was.
No, this was a guy that really isn't on the Runehammer Discord too much. It was a connection through something else.
But
gotcha.
But that group was so awesome. But then back to Joe's question. So.
Oh yeah.
So
favorite gaming moments, because I mean, yeah, someone could have been coming right out of the brunch bunch.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So I like orcs. I have a soft spot for orcs. I think they're really cool. I like playing an orc because when I played that mecha orc that ended up being the inspiration for the art, his name was Baka, and he was a mecha orc, and the whole idea was that he had this ancient orcish artifact that had been used by the Imperium to construct, his body around. So he was kind of like the ghost armor, but it was more like he had this orcish blood in him as a mecha.
Love it.
And he was +6 strength and +4 ultimate, and that's all he was. And he had no regard for his own safety, and so he just like was super squishy, but if he hit, it was just like he would just demolish, So he would hit a lot with the +6 strength, but it was just a total lopsided character. I actually jokingly kind of made his character art where it's like all upper body and his legs are like more skinny.
He skips leg day.
Little cute pics.
Yeah. So that was playing in that was a Warp Show campaign that Skippy ran, and that whole crew was super fun. We were all robots, and he ran just a really interesting campaign, and he had this moment where we went in, and it was kind of like this. We were like what's the word, like couriers, we were running jobs and picking up things, dropping it off. We didn't have a work show. We were just kind of like a work a day kind of crew, like trying to get ahead in life.
Gotcha.
And we went in and we managed to, we had this whole thing where we went down to this like trash planet, and we had to go down a space elevator and get past all security. So we had worked really hard to get up to this point where we're meeting with this guy. I think his gang leader was Two Dogs. And we were getting this like, I forget what he called them now. It was the tears of something. And it was like this, it wasn't a drug, but it was like it would enhance any flavor. It would be like, this thing was highly, highly desired by the ultra wealthy. And it was this like serum that would just enhance, taste, enhance senses. It was just like the most amazing thing ever.
MSG.
And we're supposed to get it from this, kind of like super MSG. Yeah.
Hooray, MSGs.
Super valuable. And we're there to get it from Two Dogs. And he's like, yeah, we're almost finished extracting it. Let me get it. And he paid off this whole moment where he went over, and there was these two blue aliens that were like a couple, like a husband and wife. They loved each other, and they were being tortured. And the tears that they produced was creating these like tears. And it was like, the gut punch and the buildup and the payoff. And all of us were just like,
go to work.
Are dead. We just like, so then it was like we were surrounded in this gang headquarters where it's like, no, like we're getting them out of here. And just that payoff of story was like, whoa, that's so good. And with that same group, we did an altered state run, and David ran it, and he embraced a bit more of the like chaotic dystopian feel. And we were workers we were hired as an entourage for protecting like this rock star, and that rock star had lost his guitar because he'd gone on like a drunken thing the night before, and we're trying to get it back. And it ended up being super fun and a lot of payoff, and we all kind of embraced like the kind of quirkiness of it. And of course, at the very end, it had that like where it was just so anticlimactic because he just like had a spare guitar or something like that. It's just like, and just saying out loud, it sounds really cheesy and terrible, but it played into the whole thing because we went through hell to get this guitar.
Right. So it landed at the end. I
think we ended up destroying it at the end or something like that because we're just like, oh, forget this, and we like walked away from our payday because we're just like, this is the worst, But that's in that moment, awesome. I had to level up as a player because I like combat. I built like this kind of street rat that had like an SMG, and we had this encounter with these bouncers, and I just lit them up. I just went after him, and like I spent my surge dice, took this guy out, and because I was like, okay, it's combat time, and the whole table kind of like pauses, and we're like, oh, we just gunned this guy down, like he's just doing his job. And I had this like crushing thing of like, oh, I'm that player, like I'm the murder hobo. Oh no. And all that to say, it was a great gaming moment because we were able to like pause, talk as a table of like, well, we don't want to wipe this away because we want it to like continue. I was like, guys, I feel terrible. I wasn't really like thinking this through because I didn't know what tone of game we were going for. I thought we were going for like run and gun, and it wasn't run and gun. And we have all these consequences where it's like everybody agrees like, okay, we're not gonna like do this. This is not the style of game we're going for. I apologize. We had a great moment as a group.
Interesting.
And then David just turned the screws. We get back in the game world and he's like, oh, and the guy's wallet flops open and you see a picture of his family. He's just like, I was just like, oh,
yep.
I feel so bad, you know. Everyone's kind of having a good time with it, but it was just like, oh, like it was a big moment for me to learn, like, oh yeah, like I messed up here, guys, and like we were able to like turn it around. So that was another like that was a big moment for me as a player to be like, oh, I just need to like take a pause, you know.
Dude,
so,
I love that is one of like the great moments, one of your great gaming moments, that it was like, you know, a moment of like reflection. Like that's very cool. That's
the emotional impact that we were able to pull off in some of those games was super fun. One more moment that as a GM I was really proud of was Skippy. I was running this arc, and it was focused on Ogdru, but it wasn't Doom Vault proper. Yep. And this, you know, ritual is coming back up, and Skippy was playing this weak monk healer, and I come down. It was all in VTT, and I ended up splitting the screen, and I had like this Ogdru realm and the real realm, and I had it split, and then he was like walking in both realms, and only he could see like the Ogdru realm, and his healing Nova was like what was like breaking the connection. So while these guys are like in a cave with this like ritual going on, and this guy's fighting, that was one of my favorite moments because it was like this little. It was like, and I told him, I was like, only your healing power like can do this. Like nobody can hit anything with a sword that's going to change this. Like you have to do this, and like it's going to be like damage through your healing that's going to like break this connection here. And that was just one of my favorite moments because like revealing the VTT screen, being like, I had this huge tentacled, you know, Cthulhu monster that was like the Ogdru sitting there, and everyone's like, what is happening, you know? And it was super fun.
That's
so
beautiful.
that was one of my favorite moments of the GM too.
I love it. I love it. Well,
it was a fun group.
Outside of your mecha orc, do you have a favorite character that you've played? Like, do you have a, you know, like a long-standing kind of recurring character that's sort of maybe one of your all-time favorites or go-tos?
Oh, probably. I really like the character I first played in Kane's run, where we did a Relics of Odium run, and of course I like to make everything new up, and it's just flavor. Like I'm not actually, you know, being like, oh, I want this mechanic, so I'm going to do this, but it's just all flavor.
Yeah.
So my flavor was that it was this race of these creatures were like hermit crabs, where they didn't have anything solid like bone that they could build themselves around. So they were like these nerve centers that grew into suits of armor or grew into clothing or like this kind of thing. And so and they're like really monstrous, but they're all like really good beings. So like if you were to like peel back the armor, you see like weird eyeballs and like jaws. It's kind of like the thing. But inside it's like this is like a good noble person.
Like and not futuristic Dalek that isn't an asshole. Doctor Who reference. Sorry.
So his name was Warden, and he was like a champion of his people that was like on this mission. Awesome. And he had the Shield of Grey. That's where the Shield of Grey came in with that campaign. And he had that shield. He was a tank, and he was a noble, tanky support character, and it just checked all the boxes for me. Super fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well that's great.
That's a wild concept of just a nerve cluster inside the armor.
I love that. Yeah.
That shell
so he would like take his like they wore like helmets and stuff just out of politeness because they knew it'd freak people out if they like were headless. So he would like take his helmet off and like put food down like the opening of the armor where he had like his jaws like in here. And like we had this whole like great text RP going where it's like they're all sitting around the fire like, and he's just like chatting away, just like you know, like lowering food down the gullet.
Great. I love that.
So I got to be really creative with
I love that so much. I love that character. God, golly, if we ever have a Warp Shell game, I might have to steal that idea and have those dudes show up. That's epic. Love
That
it.
is very great.
I love it. I want that. I want that warp shell supplement to come out from Epic Sloth Games.
Have to take a note of that.
Yeah. I love what you're doing, JD. So I think we're kind of I think we're kind of wrapping up here a little bit. I do want to talk about sort of our lightning round here at the end. What is your best piece of advice?
Yes.
For players.
Yes, player advice.
Mm-hmm. Do that first.
For players, I would say take quick turns. Just in general, just take fast turns. Do your thing. Roll the dice. Know what you're doing. And be in agreement with the table. And if you're not, figure something out. Because if one person's out of sync with the table and you're going for something different, it actually ends up ruining it for everybody. So don't do that.
Yeah.
And just be in sync with the table and if you're going for a certain tone, like I had to sit and have that tribunal with the group of like, oh, I thought we were running gunning. I was all excited about like my gun upgrades and my mutant upgrades that let me like do a fight, but that's not the kind of game we're going for. Like, my bad.
Yep.
And just being able to have that social awareness of what's going on as a player, is keeping it snappy, and also honor the GM. They worked really hard to do what they're doing. I have such a hard time when players like expect a level of detail that's just at a computer level. I'm just like, I don't know. And I've learned a lot of good skills to work with that. But that, as a good player, I would just say like, couch your questions in terms of like you're talking to a human and not a database. So just be like, hey, like I'm kind of curious, like what if I did this? How do you feel about that? And being able to have that kind of tone rather than like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Like just kind of negotiate and have more of a social conversation with the GM, because they worked really hard on what they're doing, and even if they don't do it perfect, like they worked hard on it, and honor that.
Yeah, that's all. Man, great advice.
Oh yeah,
great advice.
And in that note, like, let's go to the other side of that. Like, what would be your best advice for a game master or for those GMs out there?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I was chatting with my wife about it. Of like, what would I say to like somebody? And keep watching the Ultimate Effort Show, but maybe be careful with how much theory you're consuming. I find that my GM anxiety starts to rise when, and I honestly don't know how people do it, man. I see people there just like subscribe to 4 different channels. They watch every video that's being come out by theorists, and Kane's Kiln, Ultimate Effort Show, and Runehammer are like where I sit and like I'll consume content from. And beyond that, I try to be pretty careful with how much extra. And there's really, really cool creators out there. Find your people that you really connect with, and it's okay. Like, always be growing, but it's okay if your style differs, and and you're not into Mothership. Like, that's okay. You can still learn from Mothership,
right?
But I've joined the Mothership Discord a few times, because again, I'm like, oh, Mothership is so cool, and then I get in there, I'm like, it's okay. Like, this is not the style of game I'm going for. There's lots of opportunity out there, and more so than that, I get overwhelmed if I have like a whole list of Discord servers. I was looking into Cairn for a while. They're doing such cool creative stuff. It's amazing, but the style is not quite what I'm looking for. It's kind of all fantasy. And there's a certain love of modules and a style of running the game that's just different from me. So I've backed out, because I can only absorb and take in so much. And so I think that in an age where we're just getting like big book after big book after this guy's blowing up on YouTube, and this guy's blowing up on YouTube, as I'm really having a few years to kind of sink into the hobby and seeing how expansive and it's like walking in the Library of Congress and being like, well, just read all the books, Like,
yeah, right.
That's so tough. And when I started,
it starts over here.
Yeah. When I started, I had ICRPG. I had, Hank's advice through his YouTube channels that I absorbed a ton of his stuff to get started. But beyond that, I just started doing stuff. And I would just tell GMs in this modern age, like, it's okay. Like, it's okay if you don't know every system, because you get on Discord and you're like, hey, I have this idea, and it's like, well, here's the 6 systems that are similar, and this is how and it's just like, whoa, like, it's all right,
Yeah.
take a breath, like, love people for the advice that they're giving, but be able to like step back from that and own your own thing. And ultimately, the waste is not kind exists. Like I mentioned a lot of other reasons, but ultimately, it's the game I wanted to play, and so I ended up going through the effort to make it because Warp Shell felt a little zany to me, zany, over the top. I ran a campaign, and it was like a style where like I couldn't keep my hands on the reins. I was scrambling because they just had this crazy stuff that they could do. So I was like, I want to make something that is a style I'm going for, that own that, and that's why I've been happy to just hang out in that little niche corner, for the past couple of years, is because it's okay. Like that's fun. I'm not shut off and closing my mind to like other people are wrong or I'm not doing it, but it's okay to have your little corner you're excited about. Enjoy that, and don't feel like you have to master every system. Like it's just so much out there. Oh,
yeah,
it's wild.
Yeah, that's great advice.
That is a great piece.
Really good,
man.
And I would say too, if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay. I love that. It's so good.
Right.
I've had a couple of times
sit down and breathe and not be in it. Hell yeah.
I've had a couple of times over the past couple of years where, just for my own mental health, I've just kind of turned off the faucet for a little bit on the hobby. And this hobby has been ultimately super life-giving to me. And there's a point where I'm like, I'm starting to take things too personal in Discord. I'm starting to think too much and compare myself to everything else that's out there. I have these flags. And it's not that it's GM burnout. I wasn't running a ton of games, but there's just a point where media and a hobby and kind of the frenzy that this hobby can bring, the intellectualism that this hobby can bring, if it starts to feel a little burdensome, just
slow
have
down.
some grace with yourself.
Yep.
Take a break.
Yeah, I mean that's good advice literally for anybody. Have grace with yourself, have grace with others online. Assume good intentions.
Right. It's okay to literally slow down and smell the roses.
Yep, and
in fact, touching grass is good for you.
Yep, and if you gotta walk away, you gotta walk away. Yep. Well,
oh yeah,
JD, man, we really appreciate your time. We've been talking now for well over an hour, and taking you away from your day.
Is it? Oh crap!
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is so easy to get like
time
lost
flies when you're having fun.
Great conversation, man.
But I do want to know: is there anything that we didn't hit on that you think we need to amplify or discuss before Joe does his magic here at the end?
I guess just 2 quick notes.
Okay.
Yes.
One is a huge thank you. I didn't really get as much of a chance as I intended to throughout this whole story of how pivotal like King Driscoll has been as a sounding board. Him and I have been working very closely together on projects, and we're like, this would also be GM advice, like find somebody that's sharing a wavelength and you sync up with, and just talk with them. It's life-giving. It's great.
Absolutely.
And Kane's really good. We've been able to become friends. And also the players who refer to themselves as the Rico crew, who were a stalwart crew of online folks that I developed a lot of The Waste is Not Kind with. Those guys have been huge advocates. Hank was like, yeah, it looks like this product's really beloved in the community already. And that was something he mentioned as we were talking. And I'm kind of sitting here and I'm like a little sheepish because I'm like, it feels like I just have a couple of folks that are just such big champions that they're just like making the waves for me. And I just really appreciate them and all that they've been doing there.
That's community though, man. That's community. The rising tide really does raise all ships.
Yeah. And then the other thing is just to say, like, man, this whole time I've just been sweating and nervous, not because you guys are intimidating or because this is scary, but because like I'm just a dude, and I've been in this a few years, and I just want to offer that as an encouragement and like parting note is like, yeah, like I am so psyched for this opportunity to partner with Runehammer, and it is like blowing my mind that I even get to enter that same sphere. And just as an encouragement, like just get started, run games, enjoy yourself, and just it's okay to just be a dude.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, it's okay to just be a regular dude.
Well,
do that.
Yeah,
or non-determined.
Dude being the catch-all term of like,
Hell yeah, it's okay to be a guy, gal, or non-binary.
Average gamer.
Yep.
Just average gamer.
Yeah, exactly. An average gamer. Well, I have to say, congratulations on all your success. You know, I know when we talked so early on, when you were thinking about The Waste is Not Kind, when it was in its infancy, you said, I don't want this to be, you know, just sort of a product that gets overlooked. Like, I want it to actually gain some traction in the community. Like, I want it to be meaningful in the community. I mean, man, you've already done that. But I do see, like, I think this is going to put it over the top for sure. I'm super excited about that success for you, man. Congratulations. Really killer. And thanks for giving us the exclusive scoop here. Like, I feel like a legitimate show all of a sudden.
Right?
Just to encourage Alex, too, that conversation we had where you looked over what I had and the advice you gave, I feel like that was a huge level up moment where I could have an understanding of like, this is what makes this a product and this is what makes this like a fun hobby project.
Right.
And that was so huge. I mean, just your simple advice of like, you need to do the heavy lifting for a GM. That was amazing. It put it over the top. And I'm just really excited because at the moment we're recording this, it feels like I'm getting that next, like, this is what it's going to take to rise to this next level. And I'm super excited to see where that takes me.
That's awesome.
Just a really exciting feeling.
So great. Well, hopefully
likewise,
it'll end up on the shelf.
Right? Oh, it's gonna end up on the shelf. It will.
I can't wait, man. I can't wait to hold that thing. It's going to be so cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait to do this with it.
Yeah. Right. Wave it on the camera.
Yeah, I do have to say likewise, like, you know, early on with it, when you know, you talked, when we talked a little bit about it, I was super excited for it because, you know, we both love the Wasteland, and I was just dying to see how your version of the Wasteland was. Because folks out there, like, this is another fun parallel between the JDs or the Joe and the JD is not just name, but we both had the Wasteland love, and we were both working on Wasteland things. Yeah. And I have to say, like I told them, like, it's absolutely beautiful. I am 100% all for it because we are not in a competition. Like, I want all of us to win. And I am so absolutely... Get the duck ready, Alex. I'm so happy that this is happening like this for you. Like, I'm so happy that this is going on.
Yeah,
like from the whole heart. Like, I love it, dude. It is amazing. And I cannot wait to hold this book as well.
Yeah.
Well,
it is epic.
JD, hopefully you know we're super fond of you. Super excited for you, and thanks so much, man, for coming on the show. We've really had a ball chatting with you, and hopefully people will enjoy learning all about you and kind of your journey here. It's been super cool.
Right? Yeah, and that's it, folks. You heard it here first. We got the exclusive. It's okay to just be a regular nerd. Or wait, no, Waste is Not Kind. Runehammer Games.
Breaking news.
Yeah,
right? Breaking news.
All right.
EPIC Sloth Games and Runehammer Games are aligning for this new product.
Yep.
JD Hull was quoted as saying, "It's okay to just be a nerd." No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
So, Joe, I think if all hearts and minds are clear,
right? I was getting carried away on the emotional aspect, getting sentimental as an old man. And speaking of sentimentality, until we see you guys next time, take our hero coin and always roll ultimate.
Bye, everyone.